News Online's weekly spotlight on the people making news and leading change in Indian country.
O.J. Semans, an enrolled member of the Rosebud Sioux Tribe in South Dakota, is our special guest today. O.J. Semans is the founder, he and his wife, Barbara, of Four Directions. It is a Native American voting advocacy group. After leading a historic Native Vote project in South Dakota in the year 2002, O.J. and his wife, they started a organization to help lead nonpartisan Native voters to be more engaged in elections. This year, with the upcoming midterm elections in November, we just felt like it's time to start devoting more of our Native Bidaskes to dealing with the Native vote. So welcome, OJ. How have you been, my friend?
Good morning. How are you? And first of all, thank you for having me here. I pay attention to Native News Online, and it's always an honor when I get to be a part of the show and actually to visit with you. So I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Yes, great. Tell our viewers, for those who may not be familiar with Four Directions, tell us all about it, how you started it, why you started it, and I kind of mentioned it, but I hear it from you, please.
Sure. Well, way back in 2000, my wife actually worked for then U.S. Senator Tim Johnson out of South Dakota, and she worked on his campaign. It was a campaign in which now the whip for the GOP, John Thune, was running against Senator Johnson. The battle went on for a while. The polling places closed, and you understand in South Dakota where we live, the Ogallala Reservation and the Rosebud Sioux Reservation, which is then at that time it was Shannon, now the Ogallala Lakota County, and Rosebud was Todd County, it still is. We are unorganized, so the votes that were cast had to be taken to a county clerk's office or auditor's office. In some cases, that was a 2-3 hour drive. Our communities in Todd County is 100+ miles from the county auditor's office, and the same, goes for Ogallala Sioux Tribe. And so when the polls closed and you got pretty late around 9 or 10, at that time, House Representative John Thune was ahead by 3,500 plus votes. And so he was telling reporters, well, I'm going to wait till the final results and, I'll claim my victory in the morning. And Senator Johnson, he was, pretty sad and didn't know what to do. So he just said he'd talk to the press in the morning. Around 5-6 o'clock in the morning, they finally got the votes counted for Ogallala, Lakota County or Shannon County. And they got the votes counted for Todd County. And John Thune lost by 524 votes. Wow. And that's why we know it was the Native votes that counted, because all the votes were all counted throughout the state of South Dakota, except for 2 counties. And that was where the Ogallala Reservation was and the Rosebud Sioux Tribal Reservation was. So not only did they take the 3,500 that Representative Thune was ahead on, now Senator Thune, but they delivered 524 votes more, which gave Senator Johnson the victory in that election. And I want to say this, to this day, what they tried to do was say that there was voter fraud. I mean, when Indians turn out, the first thing they say voter fraud, and all this cracks me up, because one of the things I always tell people is, us Indians, we sit around the campfire and we drink our coffee and we go, let's go vote for that old white guy there. I mean, he's worth going to prison for. I mean, give me a break. Why would we do that? I mean, but that went rampant, and the Republican Party then went crazy. They went out and they got printed affidavits. They had, I was paid by 4 Directions to vote for Tim Johnson, and they went around. They found 3 tribal members to sign that affidavit saying that they got paid to vote and paid specifically to vote for Senator Johnson. Well, what they forgot to do is check to see if those people voted, because none of them voted. None of them were registered. I mean, but the thing is, first of all, it's against the law to have a prefabricated affidavit and look for somebody to sign. They never did that. I mean, we were cleared by, the South Dakota Republican Attorney General said there was nothing there. I mean, everybody said there was nothing there. But that fraud claim persisted for years and years. And if you remember, one of the things that former President Trump talked about was voter fraud in Indian country.
Yes.
He was going all the way back to 2000, because that's still out there of that false claim. And so, we know that the individuals, and we're nonpartisan. Don't get me wrong. At that time, we were partisan because my wife worked for the campaign. But it just shows the power of the native vote when they go that far to basically create these lies and these false ideas, and go out and violate the laws themselves in order to prove it, and then not have the enough brains to get somebody that actually was ready to vote. So
the joke was on them, but no, the native vote is so significant, and I really like what you were saying, that it was all the difference in that election way back in the year 2000. And so, and since then, you've done tremendous work. 4 Directions has done tremendous work. Now, coming up on Monday, there is a forum, Native American Voting Forum in Atlanta, Georgia. Tell our viewers about that and why Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah, well, first of all, I wanted to prove President Jackson didn't succeed, because there are Indians in Georgia. That was the main reason. No, it wasn't. There's over 140,000 self-identified Native American voters in Georgia. I talked about Tim Johnson, 524 votes. Well, there was another election in Minnesota in which Senator Al Franken won by 311 votes. That was, favored by Native Americans.
And that one was so close. Didn't it take a week or 2 or maybe a month for them to determine who won that? It was so tight.
It was in court for 2-3 months.
Yes. Okay. That's right. That's right.
Yep. And finally, the judge made a ruling, and then that's when Senator Franken became the senator. What was so funny is I'm going back and forth. I realize that, but what happened was because of the voter turnout during Tim Johnson's election, my wife and I actually got the Paul Wellstone Grassroots Award.
Sure.
And we went to Washington to receive that award. Well, the MC there was at that time Al Franken, the comedian.
Okay.
And so we actually got to be good friends with him. And so it was really exciting when he got elected. So going back to Georgia, we found there was 140 plus Native Americans that self-identified. And we also know how Indian country is. I mean, let's take my state in South Dakota. In the city of Rapid City, we call that the 3rd largest Indian reservation in South Dakota. There have been identified over 200 different tribal members living in Rapid City. Okay, so just because they're identified as the Sioux in South Dakota doesn't mean they're all Sioux. There's over 200 other tribes there, and the same goes in Georgia.
Okay. Yes.
And the thing about it is, if you look at the history of Native Americans and our commitment, to the armed services, per population, we have more people in the armed services than any other race. Well,
Correct.
we,
Yes.
we also have military bases here in Georgia. And so what we decided to do, and this isn't the first one, we did one in Nevada, and then we also did the Native American presidential forums in 2019 and 2020. And I consider that the spark that lit the flame throughout Indian country for the historic voter turnout, because that was the first time where Native Americans were able to listen to candidates on their issues. And I tell people all the time, you go to talk to the general public and you're going to be hearing about housing, infrastructure, healthcare. All that matters to us, but it's different. Because the fact is that we are treaty tribes. We sign treaties with the government, and a lot of people do not understand. Even though we are the minority of the minority in this country, we are minorities with nations within a nation, and that makes us powerful in itself. And so we looked at making sure that we talked about Native issues. And so what happened is we decided we would come to Georgia. We were actually in Georgia. We helped with the Get Out the Vote in Georgia, and during a special runoff back in 2021, because it was in January.
Correct. Yes.
And the Native turnout, of self-identified Native American Indians in Georgia, was at 73%. It was higher than any other race, even the Caucasians. It was higher turnout than any other race in Georgia during that special election. And so what we decided to do was, we need to make sure that if there's a battleground state, that we are able to bring the candidates, and even if it's, a small audience, live stream it to different parts of Indian country to let them hear how these candidates are going to be able to answer issues specifically for Native Americans. We have like 7 different U.S. House seat candidates from both. We have Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians that are going to be before the panel. We have Senator Warnock that is going to come to the forum, and we have Stacey Abrams, the gubernatorial candidate.
Let me stop you right there, OJ. I think the idea that Stacey Abrams and Senator Warnock showing the respect to Native Americans is pretty significant. The idea that they would come to the Native American Forum, I am so impressed with that, and congratulations to the efforts of your organization. Well,
yes, it's a team effort, and one of the things I always say about our organization is the fact that we have to put our name out there, but this isn't really about 4 directions. It is about our people throughout Indian country. And so even though they're running in Georgia, they're paying respects to all Native tribes within the United States. So yeah, I really am very honored that they decided that they would participate in this.
And I understand tribal officials from different parts of the United States will be there. Tribal chair people, chairmen, chairwomen, presidents, whatever you call the leader of the tribe, sometimes chief. But I understand that's going to happen as well, correct?
Yes, and we're getting tribal leaders from Wisconsin. By the way, we're going to do another forum in Wisconsin. We're getting tribal leaders from Nevada. We're getting them from Montana, South Dakota. I mean, so we're bringing tribal leaders in, particularly from battleground states, because the fact is we want to get our people energized. And again, our goal is not to tell them how to vote. Our goal is to get them the proper information for them to make a decision, and to get them excited enough to say that this election, I have a say in. We as Native people, we have a voice, and that's why every time we turn around, we find new laws trying to keep us from doing that. I mean, it's like you wake up in the morning and wonder which state you're going to fight.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, and I guess you and I are old enough to remember when we had to convince even members of our own family and friends in our Indian communities, wherever we were, to vote. They would say right out, what difference does it make? Why should we participate in the white man's election, or however they wanted to, however they said it? But has that been your experience too? I mean, we've come a long way.
You know, I'm actually really happy because the political process isn't the fastest train, going down the track, and for you to see your work actually come to being of creating change isn't going to happen overnight. And me and my wife been at this for over 20 years.
Yes.
And I can actually say in my lifetime, I didn't think I would really see the change that I seen happen in 2020. I mean, we have Madam Secretary Deb Haaland. I mean, that wouldn't have happened. And if you look within the government agencies, we have tribal liaisons. We just got a tribal liaison with OMB. I mean,
Elizabeth Carr from the Sault Ste. Marie tribe. That's correct. We reported on that a couple of days ago. Yes.
And you look at the people that were put into the Bureau of Indian Affairs. You look at how USDA and Department of Interior and BIA are doing memorandum agreements to do co-management of federal lands, taking and ensuring that tribes have a voice. I mean, I actually am surprised that I was able to see this in my lifetime. And it does make a difference.
It does make a difference.
Yeah. And you look at the boarding school hearings of what's going on. And not only are they having the hearings, but they're connecting with the survivors, and they're bringing HHS, IHS in so that they can deal with the trauma that was created by these boarding schools. So it's not just
so important. So important.
Yeah. They're not just painting a picture.
That's right.
They're taking and doing real things that help our people. So yes, voting matters. And like I said, not only the change that we're talking about here, but the looking at the barriers that they set before us, looking at how they will do redistricting to keep and weaken our vote. Now, even if you don't vote, knowing that this is happening to your people, to you, to your children, to your grandchildren, I hope it gives you the courage or the change your mind to participate, because the fact is we always have acted as a people, not as an individual. So a person shouldn't sit there and says, it's a white man's thing. You got to remember too, is that our treaties are controlled by Congress, the U.S. House. Our laws and what happens to our lands and our funding is controlled by Congress and the House and the Senate. And I always say that, we have a different type of warrior these days. We don't need to get our guns. We don't need to get our arrows. We need a pen or a pencil. We show up at the ballot box, and that's how we're fighting our war now. And believe me, it is a war because, like I said, the barriers are set there to ensure that we don't participate. So
where are some of the hot spots now, OJ, that you are seeing at Fort Corrections in terms of potential voter suppression during the midterm elections? Where are you concerned? What locations?
Well, Georgia, but all of, those are all still within the court system being fought. But one of the things that we found, because we actually set up a office in Nevada, because we're concerned about the 28 tribes there and want to ensure that they have equal access at the ballot box. And what we found, like going to Duck Valley, okay, the county building is probably 200 miles round trip. but it's not one of those where you get on an interstate. It's one of those where, you know, you're driving that snake road where it goes up and down, in and out.
Yes.
And then you got construction. So you're talking like a 3-4 hour trip. And
Just to
and
vote?
Pardon?
Just to go vote.
Yeah.
Wow.
And well, let me back up a little bit. We had problems in 2016 with the way the state of Nevada was treating the tribes. They in some cases were not even putting a polling place on the reservation, and members had to travel 30 miles one way to vote. And so we met with tribal leaders, with Walker River, and Pyramid Lake, and we explained the whole thing to them. We talked about voter education, about the 14th Amendment. We talked about equal access, and they decided that they weren't going to tolerate it. So a lawsuit was filed in 2016. It was called Sanchez versus Sagaski, who was the Secretary of State. And we actually won an injunction in which they put up the very two first satellite offices on the Walker River Reservation and on the Pyramid Lake Reservation. And we pushed them. And so all of the poll workers there were Native American. And so it was one of those where they had the early voting, they had voting on election day, and tribal members could come in and be greeted by friends and relatives. It was very comfortable, and immediately the turnout started to increase. And then what happened then is the election happened, and the state legislators were, House and Senate, were flipped. And what they did is they took the order by the judge that established a satellite office in Walker River and Pyramid Lake, and they codified it. And they made it a law so that any tribe that wanted to have early voting or a satellite office, all they had to do was put in a request in a timely manner. And they even developed all the forms in which the tribes can do and submit to the election officials to get a satellite office. And now that that's out of the way, what we found in Duckwater is Duck Valley. I'm ducking around on that one. Is that even though they have to travel all this way, and in the county seat alone, now per capita, Elko County is the richest county in Nevada. Their pay in house income medium in Elko County per capita is 80,000. You know, give or take 1,000. And then you go to where like Duck Valley is. It's like well, and then the medium Duck Valley and stuff is like 46,000. But that's not because of just Duck Valley. It's because we had to include the white people around that actually had the money. So we know it's lower. But being the richest county per capita, they established a early voting office within Elko. And by the way, Elko has 3% of that population is Native American. If you go to Duck Valley or Duckwater, if you go there, 3% of the population is white. So I mean, it's kind of like a vice versa. But in Elko, they allow you 120 hours to vote, and they have it on election day, right? And they have the highway right there. They got paved roads. They got everything that they need. I mean, they can wake up out of their house, fall down, and be at the office to vote. If you're on that reservation, you are only given 8 hours. And it's not on election day. They give you 2 days, 4 hours one day, 4 hours the next day. You know, And, we talked earlier about Senator Johnson, 524 votes, and we talked about Al Franken, 311 votes. And there's like a population over a little over 1,000 there. So it might be, 400 to 500 people there that can vote. In Nevada, the way things are going right now, that can make a difference of who wins or loses.
That's a close senatorial race, from my understanding.
Oh, it is a knockdown, drag out horse race. See who comes across the finish line first, and they'll probably have to have a camera and then have a review. I mean, it's going to be close, and for them to leave, that reservation out of it by only giving them 8. They don't even get a full election day. I mean, because usually you get the 12 hours. They don't even get that. And so, I'm looking at it's so extreme that we are talking to the tribes to do something about it.
And I will say this, that this is first I have become aware of this today, and I will commit that Native News Online will do a story about this, because these types of things, and to our viewers, and as you well know, we have a national footprint with Native News Online, and even you could argue internationally. But I just think that I think non-natives need to know what's going on, and so we'll have a reporter report on this, because this is just almost shocking to me, and it's something that's not right, and I think most Americans would agree to that. And you and I both know, OJ, that American democracy, and let me say this to our viewers, we are dual citizens. We are citizens, proud citizens of our tribe affiliation. In my case, I'm a citizen of the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation, very proud of that fact. But I'm also proud of the fact I'm an American citizen. And for those of us who question that, whether or not our dual citizenship, I know the IRS doesn't, OJ, we're not paying, we're gonna get the letters, right? So, but all kidding aside, I value the vote both as a tribal citizen about my tribal election, in which I do vote, and I am a strong voter in the American democracy process, and we know it's under threat right now. So to our viewers, this is an important subject, and you'll be seeing more of OJ as October progresses towards the midterm elections in November, because we just feel at Native News Online is very important. And OJ, I didn't get your reaction to Mary Patello's victory up there in Alaska, where she beat former Vice President candidate Sarah Palin. So tell us, well, how did you feel when you heard that news about Mary's victory?
You didn't hear my war whoop?
I'm getting a little old, but maybe my hearing's going. No, but that was an amazing thing, wasn't it?
It was, and again, guess what? Native vote. I mean, you look at if you look at Senator right now, Murkowski.
Yes.
Okay. She lost her primary in the last election.
Yes.
She had to come in as a write-in.
I remember
and
that.
If you look at the people that signed that write-in, it was a Native American vote that got her back into the general. I mean, and so again, we are the minority, but where they put us, we can make a difference. And I was just so happy to see that happen in Alaska. And the cool thing is, once you're an incumbent, you're pretty much going to stay there for a long time. And so I'm confident. I know she's going to have to put on another campaign here coming up in a few months, but I'm confident that she will stay a representative of the state of Alaska. So yeah, I'm happy.
She got sworn in actually on Tuesday on the 3rd, this past Tuesday on the 13th, I think it was. And the photos that I have seen of her, she was just gleaming. Her smile was it just made me so proud. It kind of gave me one of those moments as a Native person, go, wow, this is so cool. And it's, I'm gonna tell you why it's cool, because I interviewed her. She comes at it differently. Like, I asked her about her, she's pro-choice, and of course that's going to be a big factor in this election. This Dobbs thing is going to backfire, I think, on those Republicans. And what she said, now check this out, OJ, she said she measures it basically from the perspective as a Native woman. She said she remembers how American Indian, Alaskan Native women were sterilized without their knowledge or consent. So she believes it's the right thing to do to have a woman have that free choice. And so she comes at it from a Native perspective, which is, to me, is pretty deep. And a friend of mine actually told me when she read that, and we reported it in Native, she said it brought tears to her eyes, because it is something that, if you think about it, when we think that, and I've always said it this way, OJ, Native Americans see things from a different lens than, we have a different worldview than non-natives. And we don't always agree. We're not monolithic in any stretch, but at the same time, voting is so important. And OJ, I really applaud what you do. Hey, tell us about any other forums you have coming up. You mentioned it real briefly, but you have one coming up in, I think, Wisconsin, correct?
Yes. And I have to give a shout out to this doesn't happen just because of Four Directions. I mean, we work hand in hand with the National Congress of American Indians. We work right with the Native American Rights Fund.
Yes.
We have different organizations that we bring in because, something like this, we want to also ensure that even small organizations that people haven't heard of before, we want to bring them in so that other individuals know that they're not alone, and that there are organizations out there that will help them. And so we are looking at having another Native American forum in Wisconsin. I think that's a battleground state.
Yes, it is.
But here's another thing. I don't know if people know, but if you look at the data, it not only could actually control the Senate race or in the governor's race, it could actually control and flip the legislature. I mean, so it's really key to get that information out there and have those candidates come in and talk to Indians about Native issues that will help us move on to the future. Like I said, it does make a difference, and so we're looking at that Wisconsin one to be like another Georgia, successful. And getting the word out to Indian country that we are here. Hey, you've tried to genocide for years and years. It hasn't worked. You should give up, because we're going to keep coming.
We're going to keep doing. Well, Jay, thank you so much for being on Native Bidaské, and to our viewers today. Thanks to everyone who's tuned in to this live stream on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We will now sign off, and we'll greet you next week with another important guest. Again, thank you, OJ. Tree McGwitch.
If you appreciate what we do here at Native News Online, we invite you to donate to support our continued work covering Indian country. You can scan this code with your smartphone or go to the link located below this video to donate today. We greatly appreciate your support. We also want to invite you to subscribe to our daily newsletter. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you for joining us today, and be sure to join us again next week for another episode of Native Bidaské.